Hi and welcome. My name is Suzanne Hugh. I am the Educational Director and founder of CleanEarthForKids.org, and I'd like to welcome you to our panel discussion. Tonight we have our fabulous youth and a special guest, Caitlin McCoy. She's a staff attorney at Harvard Law School Environmental and Energy Law Program. So welcome to all of you. So I'll get started with Leanna. How about you kick us off?
So one example of a challenge or contest we have here at Clean for Kids is our Call It Out challenge. So you can make a video to call out pollution of our air, water, public lands, and also call out rollbacks or undoings of environmental protections. So through this, we can use our voices, our art, music, writing, and projects to call it out. So also, Chelsea, could you please share your activity and contest that helps to pay tribute and give respect to those who have worked so hard to make a better life for others?
Hi, my name is Chelsea. Tonight's presentation is dedicated to Congressman John Lewis, who dedicated his life to public service, equality, voting rights, equal pay, healthcare, and education. Later, I will share my tribute to his life. Now, here is an activity you can do to remember people. It is called These Are the Hands. To join, you can create a 2D, 3D, or digital model of a hand. Then you can design the hand with different colors, pictures, or symbols to express the story of people who have worked hard for a better life for others. For more information, please check out our website, cleanearthforkids.org. Thank you, and I can't wait to see all your submissions.
Thank you, Chelsea. So at cleanforkids.org, we have 6 teams, and social and environmental justice is a component that all 6 teams work on and do. So now I would like to give a chance for the rest of our presenters for tonight to introduce themselves. I'll quickly go myself. So hi, my name's Leanna. I'm the youth board team lead for Team 1, which is we work on climate action plans for cities and schools. It's also about renewable energy sustainability. You can help your school or city pass a climate action plan or pass a climate resolution. We have plenty of examples on our website at cleanforkids.org under Team 1. You can also check out our climate curriculum that is coming very soon, and we look forward to working with all of you and just hearing us out.
Hi,
Thank
everyone.
you so much. There you go. There's this too.
Hi,
Go ahead.
everyone. I'm Catherine. I'm an intern with CleanEarthForKids.org from Cal State San Marcos. I am so happy to be a part of Team 2 to work on planting trees and gardens and protecting public lands, forests, and wildlife. Did you know that in 2017, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service removed the Yellowstone grizzly bear population from the federal endangered species list? Even though the grizzlies area population have suffered high levels of human-caused deaths. We must protect our endangered species because the Trump administration is pushing to take many endangered species off the list to eliminate wildlife conservation and make it easier for endangered species to get taken off the list. Just this month, the Great Yellowstone grizzly bear will remain on the Endangered Species List Act thanks to Earth Justice for pushing the Fish and Wildlife to contribute to fight against the Trump administration and keep them on the list so that these beautiful creatures will not be hunted as a sport, but instead preserved in their natural habitat. Also, thank you to CARB for the grant to plant trees, put no idling signs at schools, purchase pollution monitors for citizen science, and pay for radio ads we will create. We will be holding editions soon. You can find out more details at our website, cleanearthforkids.org. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Judith, an artist with cleanearthforkids.org and Team 3. We work to reduce air pollution because we need clean air and because kids breathe here. We need the Clean Air Act and policies like NEPA to protect us from this harmful pollution. Did you know that asthma is the #1 cause of school absences and 3rd leading cause of why children under the age of 15 are hospitalized in the US? We must have protections for our air. Please turn off your engines when you are parked. No idling. Kids breathe here.
Thank you so. There you go. Hi.
My name is Jonah from Team 4, and I'm super excited to talk to you all about the importance of clean water, and specifically, safe drinking water. And our team works to preserve safe drinking water, whether it's in streams, rivers, lakes, and ponds, from human threats such as pipeline leaks, oil spills, fracking, and other forms of pollution. We know that safe drinking water, clean oceans, and healthy ecosystems depend on preventing water pollution. And that's been a focus of our team, especially given these rollbacks that have been happening. So protect water. Thanks.
Hi everyone, my name is Darren from Team 5, which works to stop toxic chemicals and pesticides from being used in our communities, specifically to protect children, workers, farm workers, communities which are disproportionately affected by pesticides, pregnant women, families. We also work to protect our communities from PFAS, lead, benzene, and other toxics that have been found in products, including artificial turf. As Janice and Telsey have said, you can speak in many ways, including making a video. Thank you to Sydney Pitcher, who did an excellent video this week about why we need NEPA and protections for people. Soon you can check out Sydney's videos on our website at cleanearthforkids.org and on our YouTube channel. You can also send us our videos if you'd like to help us make videos, or you can edit videos. Please just let us know.
Hello, my name is Julian Bratton, and I am currently a neuroscience student at UNC. And I also am studying the impact of toxic chemicals and the effect they have on brain development and function of exposed children within the communities.
And lastly, Team 6 works to eliminate plastics and have zero waste, which protects our water and our resources. So thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. Tonight we are joined by Caitlin McCoy, a staff attorney with the Harvard Environmental and Energy Law program. So Caitlin, if you could please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background, what inspired you to become an environmental lawyer, and what you do at Harvard.
Okay, well, thank you all for having me. This is such a treat to be here with all of you tonight. About me, well, I'm originally from California, and I was born in Bakersfield, California. For those of you who live in California, maybe know where that is. It's really the heart of California's oil industry, and it has really bad air quality. So from a really young age, I was attuned to environmental problems because there were a lot of days when I couldn't go out and play. And if you're from California, you're also familiar with the spare the air days. And so I became aware of some of these issues when I was really young. And then my family moved to Northern California, to a small town up like between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe. And there it was totally different. We didn't have the oil industry. A lot of the local economy was focused on recreation, like whitewater rafting and hiking and things like that. And so I got to see a totally different relationship to the environment, one that really tried to preserve the environment and celebrate it for its economic value that way versus an extraction economy, essentially, where I was born in Bakersfield. So I went on to go to college at the University of California, Berkeley. I didn't study anything environmental. I just studied rhetoric because I figured it would be good to know how to argue if I wanted to go to law school. So you don't necessarily have to study science. If you know you want to do environmental law, it's okay to take your time and to study something that's more related to theory or analysis or language or writing. You don't have to have a particular major to go to law school. So I went on to law school, and as you can see, I went to the Midwest. So I left California, went to Washington University in St. Louis, and there I learned about a lot of environmental issues that I wasn't exposed to in California, being in Missouri and also participating in the environmental law clinic at my law school. And I won't bore you with all the rest of my journey, but I went on after law school to work a few places and eventually ended up where I am now. And yeah, I enjoy my job. Basically, I work on a combination of tracking all of the federal rollbacks that you all are so familiar with. So I look at things that are happening on a federal level, all of those changes. And so I keep track of them on that rollback tracker that some of you might also be familiar with. And then I produce some papers analyzing things that are happening. And then the other part of my work is looking at what states and local governments are doing to try to address climate change, because it's clear that under the Trump administration, we don't have federal leadership on climate. In fact, we have not just a lack of action, but actively undoing the things that had been done in the past. So I try to look at what states and local governments are doing to try to fill the gap.
Thank you, Caitlin. We are so glad to have your expertise on this panel discussion tonight. Just for further background for the audience, Caitlin earned her LLM in International Environmental Law with the highest honors from George Washington Law, her JD from Washington University School of Law, and her BA, as she mentioned, from the University of California, Berkeley. So Caitlin, your hard work has made an extremely positive impact on policy and people's lives. So we just would like to thank you again for your work at Harvard and with the Harvard Tracker specifically. So just to give our audience a little bit of background on what we're discussing about the 100 rollbacks, the Harvard Tracker itself. The Harvard Tracker is incredibly valuable for research purposes and keeping track of these 100 rollbacks, or the cuts environmental protections for our air, our water, and land that are taking place during the Trump administration. So I just want to show everyone a quick picture of your Harvard Tracker on the front page of our website at cleanforkids.org, which you guys can also go to our website and see the tracker there and click on it and look for yourselves a little bit more at these rollbacks and what their progress and everything like that. So you briefly kind of mentioned your role at Harvard with the Harvard Tracker and the rollbacks. Could you tell us what your favorite part and the most challenging part of the work you do and keeping up with all the rollbacks and the Harvard Tracker in general?
Yeah, so as you noted, there are about 100 rollbacks overall. I think in terms of like entries on our tracker, we have about 70 different like pages that have the rollback, or that each feature like one rollback. And so I don't do all of those, thank goodness. I have two colleagues who we divide between the three of us leadership over like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So I have about like 25 rules that are like my rules that I'm supposed to follow. And during the school year, I also have research assistants who are Harvard Law School students that help me keep it updated. So they help me check the news every week and make sure that we catch anything that's been happening on those 20 to 25 rules that I follow. So it's interesting because there's always something happening, unfortunately. I wish that it was going in a different direction, right? Like I wish that we were enhancing protections and changing these regulations in a way that was addressing climate change and addressing some of our continuing issues with air pollution and water pollution. But it's not, it's going the other way. And that's the hard part about my job. It's hard to work on this stuff like every day, especially under the Trump administration when, like I said, things are going backwards. And so I do feel really depressed sometimes and really sad. And I think it's normal. Like if you feel that way, like when you're reading about some of this stuff, like it's okay, you know, like it's something that I have to battle with every day, and I have to try to find something that I can do that is positive, beneficial, helpful in some way in this whole situation. And so part of, like I said, what I do is try to channel that into maintaining these tracker pages and explaining everything that's happening. That way people can stay informed, and also that way we have a full record of everything that's happened, so that hopefully one day we can not only put some things back, but actually enhance things even better than they were under the Obama administration. That's my great hope.
Hello, it's Judith. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for all the work you do, and we're all so grateful for what you do at Harvard, where you educate the public and give them the knowledge and tools to protect clean air, water, public lands, and endangered species. If there's anything you'd like to add to the information we're going to present, please feel free to. We are so grateful to people working on policies or on solutions to reduce air pollution, because air pollution is a serious problem that makes people sick and even ends lives. Mercury hurts brains. In fact, mercury can affect the developing brains of children, where exposure can actually lead to permanent neurological damage and loss of IQ. Because the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, took away MATS, mercury and air toxic standards, children who live near power plants will be exposed to mercury, arsenic, and other toxins. Andrew Wheeler, a former coal lobbyist who now leads the EPA, said that reducing power plants' toxic pollution is not worth the cost to industry, which is crazy despite all the thousands of lives that MATS has saved. This is terrible because coal plants release mercury, lead, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and carbon dioxide, a potent or strong greenhouse gas. This contributes to climate change, and is also linked to asthma attacks, heart problems, and other diseases. The purpose of MATS, environmental protection, was to protect children and communities from mercury and other air toxics coming from burning fossil fuels at power plants. Unfortunately, 68% of people of color live within 30 miles of a coal power plant. Studies show that living near, Studies show that living near to a source of pollution is bad for your health. It is not healthy or safe for people to breathe in toxic air pollution from power plants, factories, busy highways, or airports. This is so serious that 16 states and New York City are suing for MATS protection. Thank you again, Caitlin, for working as an environmental lawyer to educate us and defend important rules like MATS. When working as a lawyer, what do you do to prepare for a case or argument against a polluter? Also, is there anything you'd like to say about MATS or add?
Well, I think you did a really great job, Judith, covering MATS. It's a complicated area to cover. The Clean Air Act can be an intimidating statute, even for experienced environmental lawyers. And that's because air pollution is just a really complicated subject. And so, okay, let me think if there's anything I want to add about MATS. I guess one thing that I would add is, like, part of how the administration is doing away with MATS is that they're changing the math behind the way that we create these rules. So in order to say that it's justified to create the rule on mercury, the MATS rule, in the standards, you have to say that the benefit of the rule will outweigh the cost. And so under the Obama administration, the EPA created a finding that said it's going to be so valuable for exactly the reasons that you listed, Judith. It's going to save so many lives, and people's lives are so valuable that outweighs the cost of installing the technology at the power plants to try to control the amount of mercury that's going to go out of the smokestacks and into the air. And so the way that EPA is now undoing it, like you said, under Administrator Wheeler, is to change the way those benefits and those costs are calculated. So they've actually taken a lot of the benefits off of that side of the scale. So now it makes the rule look like it has more costs than benefits. And so I just thought, in case you wanted to know, like, more about how they're doing it. And it's problematic because the agency could use that approach with some other regulations beyond Mercury, and use this sort of new way of doing the math to change that balance, which is troubling. And so, okay, to the question of when you have a case. So it's been a while, admittedly, since I have had litigation time, meaning time in court. So when I first came out of law school, I worked for 2 years for a very small environmental organization in Pennsylvania, working on coal mining and natural gas drilling, aka fracking. And there we had some cases. We had 3 cases that I worked on that were all against big coal companies in Pennsylvania. And it was about how they were affecting the water quality in Pennsylvania. And it's really hard to prepare for those cases. It takes a lot of time, and you just do a lot of research to create all of your arguments and write your briefs. And the lawyer that I used to work with, my colleague, her name is Sarah. She is very talented. Some people are just very talented at that side of things, like going to court and setting up all those arguments and being able to stand up in court, you know, like you see on TV, and make those appeals to the judge and to cross-examine witnesses. She's really good at that. To ask people a million questions to get them to like admit what she wants them to admit. And she's amazingly talented. But working with her, I realized that's not my talent. I'm really good at writing the briefs and doing the research, and I like doing presentations, obviously, but the level of like strategy that you have to do the arguments in front of the judge, and also do depositions, you know, like where you like record things in advance, where you ask people questions who are involved. That is a really specialized skill set. So I learned that it wasn't for me. I'm not one of the people who's meant to be going to court, but I really like doing the research and doing the writing. And so that's how I ended up moving my career more in that direction.
Thank you so much. It's Jillian again. Let me first start off by saying thank you so much, Caitlin. We are super appreciative of all the work you've done with Harvard and smaller environmental organizations, focused specifically on the education and organization aspects. It is particularly inspiring to hear how you, from a young age, have been challenging the narrative that the fossil fuel and specifically the coal industry has created. Also, Judith, it is so impressive to see young students so educated and so passionate about information that is so important, specifically when we're talking about these rollbacks, because I believe 18 to be exact mention coal specifically. From a scientific standpoint, many studies have concluded that the byproducts of coal, like mercury, arsenic, and lead, have all led to detrimental health effects on children. Many of these studies come from the National Institute of Health, which have shown not only does coal in the form of coal ash cause neurobehavioral deficits in children, but it also causes problems like insomnia and ADHD, which you wouldn't expect to see. And the article from Yale actually shows that some of these detrimental effects can take place before we're even born, while we're still in the womb. So very important information and incredibly impressive.
Thank you, Jillian. I agree. And now, because of the NEPA rollback, unfortunately, new coal power plants can be built on our public lands. We should not allow coal mining on public lands. We need to protect people, our water, air, and public lands. Public lands are our national treasures. Did you know that toxic air pollution affects 90% of our national parks? Did you know that the distance people can see at our national parks is shorter by about 50 miles because of air pollution? Please stop and think about this for a second. In 90% of our national parks, air pollution is blocking how far we can see. Little tiny bits of pollution called particulate matter, or PM, is smaller than a single strand of human hair. So imagine the amount of pollution and dirty air we can see. The Haze Rule is part of the Clean Air Act. The purpose of the Haze Rule is to protect clean air, reduce air pollution, and improve visibility in our national parks. But the Trump administration is rolling back this rule. Without the Haze Rule, tons of toxic sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide will be scattered all throughout our air by burning fossil fuels, oil, gas, and coal. Caitlin, I'd like to share a couple of your quotes about the importance of NEPA and environmental protections, and you can give us an update after I finish. So NEPA means that the National Environmental Policy Act, it was approved on January 1st, 1970. NEPA has given a voice to hundreds of millions of Americans, a voice they need to speak out. Before NEPA in 1956, the federal government demolished or tore down hundreds of houses in an African-American neighborhood in St. Paul, Minnesota. The NEPA process gives the public a chance to speak out about projects that will be built in their neighborhoods and communities. We need NEPA to protect our homes, neighborhoods, and communities. Communities, public lands, endangered species, and historical sites from disastrous consequences. We can't have our voice taken away. NEPA has saved billions of dollars because projects must be reviewed for safety first. In fact, there are NEPA success stories that you can read about from 47 states. Without NEPA, the environmental impacts of the terrible proposals in our communities will not be studied or reviewed. We need to know the risk to our communities. NEPA guarantees us a voice. We must have NEPA. Thank you, Caitlin, for protecting our communities. Caitlin, would you like to add anything else about NEPA?
I think, Judith, that was pretty comprehensive coverage of what NEPA is and what's important about NEPA. Like you said, it used to be that the federal government didn't have to give anyone a warning when they were going to initiate a huge project. And they didn't actually have to sit down and study the environmental impacts of the project that was going to happen. And so that's why they often call NEPA a look before you leap law. It's basically meant to make the government, and if there is like another group involved, like if they're giving a permit to a corporation to do something, for everybody to sit down and actually think about all of the environmental impacts of that project. And then, like you said, share that information. Transparency is a huge part of that. Actually tell the people that live in that area what these impacts are going to be and allow them to comment on it. And like you said, there is a history of the NEPA process opening some dialogue in a way that can seek to minimize some of those impacts and even shape the way that the project is ultimately designed so that the project works better for the government or the company as well as the community. And so I think that's what we should always be striving for. So these recent changes to the way that NEPA will work are really troubling because they will change some of those features of NEPA.
Hi there. I'd also like to take a quick minute, Caitlin, and thanks so much for your work and standing up against recent rollbacks of protection for water, because my team focuses on water. And I'd also like to take a minute to thank the New York Times for writing this awesome article about the 100 rollbacks that the Trump administration has done against various environmental regulations. And this New York Times article also used the Harvard tracker and Columbia's deregulation tracker as well, both of which are just fantastic sources of data for this topic. I wanted to talk briefly on a specific rollback on water protection by the Trump administration, and that's rollback number 79. And that reduces pollution protections for certain tributaries and wetlands that were once regulated under the Clean Water Act. And we know so well the essential role that wetlands play in filtering pollution and absorbing carbon in the atmosphere. And in this way, wetlands are just so important for absorbing greenhouse gases and helping fight the release of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and climate change. So I want to turn back to you, Caitlin. I know that your work has oftentimes focused on stopping water pollution through that occurs through pipelines like the Keystone XL. So I wanted to get your comments on that. Thanks so much again. Yeah.
Yeah, so the change to the Clean Water Act regulations occurred just earlier this year. And yeah, like you said, we now have some reduced protections for streams that were previously covered by the Clean Water Act and wetlands that were previously covered by the Clean Water Act. And now some of those protections don't apply to some of those waterways and wetlands. And that's really troubling because you pointed to the Keystone, but there's so many other projects that continue to develop different areas and, like you said, affect wetlands and affect waterways. And the situation with the Keystone is kind of interesting because it's a special permit that is given to certain types of projects under the Clean Water Act. So if you're only going to disrupt a small amount of wetlands and you're doing a certain kind of project, like anything to do with like utility lines, so you're building electric transmission lines, you're building cell phone towers, you're building a pipeline, you're putting in any kind of pipe or anything like that, you can use a special permit called Nationwide Permit 12. And the Army Corps, if you're only going to disrupt a small amount of wetland, I think it's like less than half an acre. And what happened was the Keystone was going to use that for all of the times that it was going to disrupt wetlands along its route. And the judge in the Northern District of Montana said, hey, wait, when this nationwide permit was created, the Army Corps of Engineers, which is who's in charge of this permit and who's in charge of wetlands, they didn't study the impacts to endangered species closely enough. And so he actually like vacated that permit, meaning like he deleted it. And so everyone kind of freaked out across the country. I think you might have seen in the news. And that's because any kind of pipeline or like utility work had to stop if it was going to like cross a waterway. Eventually, they asked a judge if he would scale back his decision, and he did. He said, okay, I'll scale it back just to new oil and gas pipelines that want to use this permit. But then they took it to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then they took it eventually to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, okay, actually, we're going to scale it back just a little more. Only the Keystone pipeline is not allowed to use the nationwide permit anymore, but everybody else is allowed to in the meantime. So anyway, that's the sort of like journey. It was sort of an unusual situation, but I guess the takeaway for all of you is that, yeah, the Keystone is not allowed to cross wetlands at the moment. So they're doing a little bit of construction, but what they're doing right now is limited because they can't cross waterways or disrupt wetlands. So that's going to push out the construction time even further. And so we'll see what happens because they've already had a lot of delays along the way.
Yeah, thank you so much for your giving us like a little bit more insight and knowledge about the things that we are trying to discuss with you today. So I think the rest of us are going to talk about a little bit about the concerns we kind of have with the rollbacks and talk a little bit about certain rollbacks and so forth. So being on Team 1, I focus a lot about climate action plans and renewable energy. So one of the things I'm concerned about is obviously the burning of fossil fuels because it creates pollution and greenhouse gases, and that accelerates climate change, and it is a public health threat, and so much more. So we have to work to reduce these greenhouse gases causing climate change but a lot of these rollbacks do connect to that, whether it's about emissions, certain, like the taking away the power of like California's power to regulate certain things, and also just overall the 100 rollbacks or cuts to environmental protections during the Trump administration have been awful and are super harmful. And one of them also limits science and scientific data for environmental reviews, and also limits the public's ability to be informed about it and speak out about it. So the theme of blocking public access to make comments or get the information needed is concerning, as well as limiting science and the certain scientific studies that they can use to make decisions about certain environmental protections and certain environmental laws. So thank you again for your tracker and keeping people informed. And I just wanted to kind of discuss that. So just thank you again.
Yes, thank you, Caitlin. I am Catherine. I am also concerned that public comments have been limited, even at the National Park Service. Employees of the National Park Service are not allowed to provide evidence-based public comments about what is happening. That is very troubling. The voice of the public must be heard. We must take action to protect our wildlife and ecosystems.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. I agree. One of the ways we can protect our wildlife and ecosystems is protecting ourselves from pesticides, because some pesticides known as neonicotinoids are killing our bees. And as you may or may not know, 1 in every 3 bites of food that you eat exists because of a pollinator. So like Lena said, we must reduce our carbon, and one way we can do that, pesticides also play a role in this. Healthy soil, which contains microbes, sequesters or absorbs carbon. And the way that this works is some of the microbes are algae that absorb carbon from the atmosphere, and when they decompose, this carbon is released into the soil, and then a special type of fungi called AM fungi store the carbon and then provide it to the plants via their roots. And this is really important because soil sequesters more carbon than plants in the atmosphere have combined. So pesticides are really a threat to our air quality right now. Our soils are not healthy when we use toxic chemicals that kill the microbes in our soil. Plants and crops thrive in healthy soil and ecosystems. And we must protect the food that we eat and the water we drink, and especially for farm workers and children. We must work to ban toxic pesticides and chemicals that are harming people. If you're interested in joining us and helping out, there's a few ways you can do that. One way is to stay informed. We have a list of the toxic pesticides that are currently being used on leased lands in the county of San Diego and elsewhere, and we are asking them to stop, so you can join us in that fight. You can also join us in supporting HR 230 that is co-sponsored by our California Congressman Mike Levin, that bans chlorpyrifos, a neurotoxic pesticide that hurts the brains of children. And also it's linked to a reduction in IQ, attention disorders, insomnia, depression, a lot of bad things. So recently, one of the rollbacks was to reject a proposal to ban chlorpyrifos, so hopefully we can get this up and running again. If you'd like to send any of your other ideas and work on other projects, make videos, enter contests, apply for internships or community service, please contact us at cleanearthforkids.org. I would also like to say, along with everyone else here, Kate and Caitlin, thank you so much for your Harvard tracker, which is keeping us up to date on this regulation, or lack thereof, on chlorpyrifos, and for your work on NEPA and the numerous rollbacks you cover. The information you make, the information is digestible and accessible for us because of you, and it's helped us tremendously in educating ourselves and others. Going off of that theme of information, we are concerned about the withholding and disregard of scientific information, particularly in decisions that the EPA makes. The EPA has restricted their scientific advisory committees, there are numerous of them in the EPA, from giving their expert opinion on potentially toxic chemicals, which is extremely concerning to us. They have postponed, shortened, and canceled meetings with these committees. They have worked to reduce the independence and effectiveness of these committees. They have barred scientists who have received EPA grants from serving on EPA advisory committees, which doesn't really make that much sense and disqualifies a large number of independent experts. They've also disbanded the Clean Air Scientific Advisory Committee, which worked on particulate matter. And as we've mentioned earlier in this discussion, it's extremely harmful to human health and the environment as a whole. They also used a screening process which was deemed illegal by 3 separate courts to choose candidates for the Chemical Safety Advisory Panel. And they have held SACC, which stands for the Scientific Advisory Committee on Chemicals. They've held their meetings in the middle of public comment periods. And usually they're able to use public comment to factor into their reviews and assessments of the EPA actions, but now that they're held in the middle of public comment, these commenters are either forced to read through all of these documents really fast, or the EPA advisory panel will not have as much access to public opinion. We are concerned about industry-funded studies that try to prove that toxic chemicals are safe by cherry-picking or eliminating information that the public needs to know. We are concerned about paid lobbyists for pesticide companies, chemical companies, fossil fuel companies, and ALEC that pressure and try to persuade our representatives in the bills they put forward. We are concerned about the poor quality of industry data. We must take a hard look at who has been appointed to top officers during the Trump administration. Why is it that a coal lobbyist is in charge of the EPA? Why is it that an oil lobbyist is in charge of our public lands? And why is it that information campaigns about science and NEPA are becoming commonplace? Thinking critically about all of this is the first step towards making change.
Thank you, Darren. Hello, everyone. I would like to thank again Caitlin McCoy for supporting us. We're looking forward to learning more from you. Before we close tonight, I'd like to give a tribute and some history about John Lewis. When he was young, John Lewis was inspired by the words of Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders. He decided to use his hands to pray, to lift people up, and to work for change. John Lewis used his voice as a tool against segregation, the policy that separated Blacks from whites. He peacefully protested inequality. He peacefully protested for the rights of the Black community. And his peaceful protests continued. John Lewis participated in the Freedom Rides, a nonviolent protest against segregated bus terminals. And as a result, he and others were beaten and arrested for challenging the unjust system. But even so, he persevered. John Lewis became the chairman of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and he went on to help coordinate the March on Washington. The March on Washington took place on August 23, 1963. John Lewis, Martin Luther King Jr., and 250,000 more supporters made history as they marched. This march paved the way for the 24th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. No longer did people have to pay poll tax to vote, so those who were more poor had the opportunity to vote. They also made way for the Civil Rights Acts of 1964 to pass. It banned segregation in public places and employment discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, gender, or national origin. And he didn't stop there. John Lewis kept working for civil rights. In 1965, John Lewis with Hosea Williams led a peaceful march starting at Selma, Alabama, and ending at its capital, Montgomery, Alabama. The goal was to end voter discrimination so Black voters could register. Sadly, that day is called Bloody Sunday because state troopers and local police attacked the marchers with clubs and tear gas when they crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Alabama. The shocking turn of events later on led government officials to pass the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which protects and enforces the 14th and 15th Amendments. Today, people are working to rename the bridge after John Lewis and the civil rights movement. However, the local government in Alabama has not changed the name of Edmund Pettus Bridge, but we will make it happen. John Lewis fulfilled many key roles in the civil rights movement and was committed to end legalized racial segregation in the United States. He was a congressman for 33 years for the state of Georgia, and in that time, he fought for racial equality, civil rights, voting rights, fair pay, healthcare, education, and the right to peacefully protest. John Lewis used his hands to work for change. If you would like to pay your respects and remember someone that has made the lives of others better, you can enter art, stories, poetry, and projects to Clean Earth for Kids. Also, regarding the Edmund Pettus Bridge, you can send an email, write a letter, or sign a petition to change the name of the bridge to honor John Lewis and other civil rights leaders who were beaten on Bloody Sunday. as they marched peacefully to end segregation and the oppression of African Americans. It is currently named after a horrible Ku Klux Klan leader, Edmund Pettus, who wanted to keep slavery and was a general in the Confederate Army for the South. We must continue to stand up for social justice and environmental justice. Thank you for your support.
Here we go.
You're mute, Suzanne.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. I was muted. Chelsea, thank you so much for your important work and bringing us that information. There can be no environmental justice without social justice. So this is just absolutely important. And thank you so much. We're so proud at Clean Earth for Kids to not only have our 6 teams, but a social and environmental justice commission. And we're really excited about your contest. These are the hands and the activities for teachers and the curriculum that we're offering for free, for everyone to use that we're developing that Leanna mentioned earlier, and the fun stories that you guys are writing to make sure that this information is accessible to all, kindergarten and all the way beyond. So very important. All of the important things. So we're excited about all of the great things to come on our website and on our YouTube. Darren recently created 3 lessons that are appropriate for different grade levels, and then connected them. It's about healthy soils, in which he spoke about tonight beautifully, and the importance of not using pesticides. And so those are available on our website and on our YouTube. So we're always looking for great people. Of course, we found the greatest people here, of course. We could use some more help with film and media, of course, but Darren's doing such a great job. Thank you so much for that. And a shout out again to Sydney Pitcher. We're really excited to air your wonderful video clip that you worked on. Darren had the privilege of editing that video for you, and we're really excited about that. So before we close, we have a few more minutes. I'd like to ask Caitlin about, you had shared, and thank you so much for being so candid, about the hard work, right? So you roll up your sleeves every day, and you have to face all of these rollbacks from the Trump administration, and it can sometimes be so disheartening and devastating. Well, of course, we are so absolutely grateful, because without your foundational work, we would not be able to do our work. And I can tell you, thank you so much for explaining how you guys divide it up. We also have we divide it up as well. So our different youth board and consultants and things, they look at the different rollbacks as well. So a message of hope. So I wanted to ask you, Caitlin, in looking forward and thinking about the very important work that you're doing and how much you've inspired us, I just was going to ask you about your hope for the future. And especially, we've got to get that, well, not especially, all of these rollbacks, we've got to make that happen. So I would like to ask you about that, and then other ways and other ideas that you have for us to make a positive impact. So of course, we're going to be, pushing HR 230, to get chlorpyrifos banned in the other 47 states and all of those sorts of things like that. But I just love to hear from you what we could do, and if you feel hopeful for the future, and yeah.
Oh, well, thanks for that, Suzanne. Let me just turn this off really quickly. So I think that's kind of noisy. Okay. What gives me hope? Well, I think, I'm full disclosure, I'm 32 years old, and I've been out of law school for 6 years now. So even though it sounds like I'm older, I really haven't been working in this space like full time for a long time. But I have already seen a lot of change over this, short amount of time. I mean, from when I entered law school in 2011 to now, so about 10 years, I've just seen so many things shift that I wasn't sure would shift. I feel like there's a lot more awareness of all of these issues. You all are a great example of that. And there's more of a willingness to like dig into some of this stuff, where when I first learned about it, I thought, well, this is really interesting to me because I care about these environmental things, but like, I just don't know how interested like my mom might be, or my friends that like work on other things like might be. But I'm seeing over time that people are really increasingly, they care about climate change, they care about all these different issues, and they're working to educate themselves. And I've seen a lot of attitudes shift, I think, more dramatically than I thought would happen. I mean, like one change in particular that I can point to is like attitudes towards natural gas. When I first started learning about like decarbonization and like, okay, like it made sense to me that we were gonna need to switch from fossil fuel energy to renewable energy and try to get all of the carbon out of our electricity system. And it also made sense to me that we would have to switch away from using oil in our cars and switch to eventually get to electric vehicles, whether those are individual vehicles or public transit. But I was unsure what the future of trying to get natural gas out of people's homes for heating and cooking would be. That seemed to me to be like this really daunting thing. And even back like 10 years ago, a lot of people talked about natural gas, as this like bridge between coal and between renewables. And so I just thought, oh goodness, that's going to be really tough. And with the explosion of fracking, we had so much natural gas in this country. I wasn't sure like when that day would come, that it became more mainstream, that people were aware of the need to move away from natural gas. But really just in the last couple of years, I've seen so many changes and so much more awareness about wanting to use heat pumps, which is a technology that you can use instead of a furnace that would use natural gas to heat your house, and switching your cook stove from natural gas to electric and using induction, which is a really great technology that actually uses magnets. And so then you don't have any emissions from natural gas inside your house. Now there's more awareness too about the air quality problems that you create in your house when you use natural gas to cook, which I think a lot of people just didn't know about. So that's one thing that's been like encouraging to me, because when I first started learning like, oh yeah, and part of this decarbonization journey is getting natural gas out of people's stoves and out of their furnaces, I thought, that's a big task. And I don't know if people are going to be really passionate and on board with getting that done. But I think we've seen a real change in attitudes just over the last couple of years. And I find that really encouraging. It's just one small thing, but still, it's a big thing at the end of the day in terms of decarbonization.
Thank you so much for that. And the rollbacks that you've worked on, I think it's like they're at the end, right? Of the 100, it's like 98, 99. Anyway, thank you so much for those and your important work with natural gas. Just so much great information. And so I'm so excited to have everybody check out that New York Times article with the 100 rollbacks, and then use the Harvard tracker. So it's so great. So if you want to know about what's going on with water, you just type in the keyword water, right, in the search bar, not the one at the top, because that searches the stuff for the page. You go down to tracker entries, you put in water, presto, you've got the information. And it's so cool, as Leanna was saying earlier, that you can see exactly what's going on because they update it, and it's just phenomenal. And so who knew that we would be having these conversations, and we actually know like the numbers of these rollbacks from the New York Times article and stuff like that. So your work has been so important because you got a good article from the New York Times on most of the 100 rollbacks, although we welcome everyone to submit articles because we're going to be everything's for free always, but like publishing things. And if you want to be published, you want to invite your ideas, you can put stuff on our blogs, enter contests. We have all kinds of contests and stuff, not just K-12, but everybody, because we all need to work together and be acknowledged when we're doing this important work. So, and we have our water expert actually on this call as well, Dr. Emily Catalan. So happy to have you. Earlier today, I was on with her and Julie Morisseau and Jonah and the people you see here, and we're digging into the rollbacks, as we do, because we've got the slides. I mean, we're ready to go. So we want to break it down for, we're gearing for a 4th grade reading level, like on the front of the slides that we've created. And then down below is, maybe someone at a higher reading level. So say high school, college, beyond. And then again, it's really important to us, like you were saying, about we need a record of this, because who would believe that the Trump administration brought back a neurotoxic chlorpyrifos that hurts kids' brains? People will look at you and say, no one would ever do that. And so our response to that is, well, there's a psychological term for people that do that, and that actually is the case. So chlorpyrifos, as Darren said so well, and as Jillian has talked about before as well, and all of us here, I mean, it's just not okay. So so who would have thought? I mean, and how do you stay sane in these times, right? Because people are thinking that's absolutely not possible. These things are happening or rolled back, but they are, and there you are. So what advice do you have to us? We're working hard, we rolled up our sleeves, we're going for it. And it is hard. So what words can you give us to keep us fighting the good fight and all of that? So.
Goodness, some pressure. Well, I also wanted to, since you mentioned chlorpyrifos, compliment Darren, because I was really impressed with the way that neonicotinoids just flowed, because it took me a really long time to master that. And how Darren shared about the changes to science, because those are some of the things that are like kind of behind the scenes, like you may not read about those in the New York Times. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. A lot of those are like sort of behind the scenes things that happen to the way that these agency boards are created and the experts that can serve on them. So I just kudos to you guys for digging into all of this. And I think that, at this point, that is one of the best things that we can do, is just to educate ourselves. I mean, certainly that's a big part of what I do, so I suppose I'm biased in saying that. But, I think it can be helpful in terms of like your sort of like mindset and balancing, like learning about these rollbacks, which can be hard, to go out and do things in your community that make your community a better place, whether that's working with people or doing something environmentally related. I know you mentioned that you guys are going to be planting trees. If that's, just doing a trash pickup with your friends, just say like, let's go for a walk and like pick up all the trash that you see along the way. I mean, obviously use gloves. We'll got to be mindful during these times, but little things like that, or just like visiting with people who live in your neighborhood or things like that, just sort of small things that you can do like at a grassroots level. That's what always gives me hope and makes me feel like I'm having an impact. I know it might sound surprising to all of you to hear that sometimes I worry I'm not doing enough and that I'm not having enough of an impact. Even I don't escape that insecurity or that fear. And so I remind myself that, I'm doing the best that I can by doing things like volunteering at like a community garden or things like that. And so, I think that you have to try to balance like educating yourself, but also trying to like do things that are more active, and certainly encouraging people in your life to vote. And voting once you all are of age is also really important part of that sort of action-oriented bit too.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of the great advice. And we're at 6:30. Just hats off to all of our fabulous youth panelists. And thank you so much to Caitlin McCoy, staff attorney at Harvard Law School Environmental and Energy Law Program. And we're so excited to have this great friendship with you and relationship with you. And thank you so much. When Columbia was on a couple weeks ago, you offered to, stay on and talk with students. And I just really, and answer questions. And it just meant so much to all of us. And so again, shout out to Janice and all of those people who work so hard and aren't here tonight. And we're sending you our love and our best wishes. And we're just overwhelmingly so proud of all of you. So love you so much. So what we'll do at this time is, first of all, we'll welcome everybody for, because we at 5:30 our time here in California. But we know, thank you to, people in Missouri listening and on the East Coast and all around. Thank you so much for being with us here every week. It means so much to the students. I mean, Judith put in over 8 hours yesterday, as she often does. Darren, I mean, everybody's working really hard to make sure they have the information and they bring it to you in just the right way and really understand it themselves. They were so excited to talk with you, Caitlin, and you're just a joy and a delight. And thank you so much for all of your honesty, and it just gives us a sense of happiness knowing that you're there working today and we're over here. And yes, we do fun stuff too. We do, just so everybody out there knows, we do a lot of fun stuff. So thank you so much for that. But yeah, we do get out and we do fun things. A fun video that Darren shot a couple months ago at a park. We were there. We'll have to be eating outside, I guess, in the future, guys, when we get together, going to our restaurants and stuff, be outside and have our good social distancing. But we'll be doing all of those things. And we do beach cleanups with Surf Rider. And so shout out to all of our great friends. Thank you, and the different organizations that are so supportive. So what I'll do at this time is I will invite Caitlin to stay a minute. Now she's on the East Coast, so she's not going to be on. She's going to be on like 5 minutes. I'm going to set the time. I'm like, okay, Caitlin, you got to go. Anyway, but she's going to stay on, and then for a minute, and then I'll invite, of course, our fabulous youth people, or you can hop off, because I know this has been just an exciting day, yesterday to prep for actually talking to someone so absolutely accomplished who's working on our stuff and is like laid the foundation for us and is out there fighting the good fight with policy. And we can just picture you, right? So here's the lamp and you're writing down notes and we're writing down notes, and yeah. So anyway, it just is a really good feeling. So thank you again so much. So I will go ahead and invite people that are with us, the participants. I'll be, so John Bottorff is going to be helping me right now. So to move people to the panelists, if you'd like to do that, you may. And if not, then we'll see you next week.